Great. My name is Terry Eichel. I live in Preston, Connecticut, and I actually have two hats in the environmental world. One, I work full time as for the Avalonia Land Conservancy, which is a great land trust in regional southeastern Connecticut. And then I also work with the Interreligious Eco Justice Network part time. We're a faith based environmental organization that works with religious communities around the whole state of Connecticut to help them become good stewards of the planet. And so one of the programs that we were doing that have been very successful for about 2.5 years were green forums, which were 90-minute forums in person, bringing together panelists on different topics and doing this all over the state. And it was great. And we were having fantastic turnout. And our last one, I think, was March 2nd of 2020. And it was on environmental racism in Hamden. And then, of course, the shutdown occurred and we immediately switched over to online and have been holding webinars ever since. And this is actually, I think, our 8th webinar since the shutdown. We've done a variety of topics: toxic chemicals, solar for houses of worship, pollinator pathways, environmental voting, intersectional environmentalism, sustainable diets. We've done several things actually around gardening. Gardening is a great activity for the pandemic. It's something you can do virtually at your household, place of business, house of worship. So this is our final one for 2020, and we're doing this in conjunction with a New London Pollinator Pathway. This picture that you see is actually from the New London Pollinator Pathway. They've installed some beautiful gardens in New London, and if you haven't had a chance, please go to the New London Pollinator Pathway Facebook page, and you'll just see some beautiful photos of wildflowers all throughout New London. So, here we go. This is sponsored today by the Connecticut Interfaith Power and Light, the New London Pollinator Pathway, and the Interreligious Eco Justice Network. And today we're going to be talking about propagating native wildflowers from seed. And we thought this would be a perfect topic for November because it's something you can do during the winter and get you all excited for the spring and having some beautiful flowers ready to go. So our presenter is Jim Search, and Jim is the education coordinator at the Yale Peabody Museum of Natural History. He was a past president and is currently on the board of the Hamden Land Conservation Trust. Another land trust person. A certified Connecticut master gardener, Jim gives talks throughout the state on gardening for pollinators and growing native plants from seed, and is dedicated to helping improve backyard biodiversity. Jim was featured in the Members Making a Difference section of the summer 2016 issue of the American Horticultural Society's American Gardener magazine. Jim also authors a weekly nature blog called Beyond Your Back Door. So we're very excited to have Jim. And the last thing I'll do is I'll just show you, this is our first 2021 webinar, which will feature Doug Tallamy. Did I say that right? Yep. Yes, he was nodding. Who's a nationally known author on backyard gardening. So that will be also great and getting us, well, January will still be cold and snowy, but we'll be looking forward to spring. So without any further ado, I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to let Jim take the wheel.
Alrighty. Well, thank
you so much for joining us, Jim.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Terry, for having me.
Actually, one more thing, folks. If you have questions, we'll do Q&A at the end. Please put them in the Q&A or in the chat. And after Jim's presentation, we'll go through them and you can get to all your questions.
Thank you. That's great. Great to be here, folks. And I'd really love to have you all with me and doing seeds together and planting so you can see it hands-on. But I'm hoping that this is the next best thing because I have a document camera and I'm just going to go through some of the steps so you'll be able to see that. So that's great. So here we go. Let's, and hopefully, yeah, we're started here now. So this is the downer part of the talk, just to say, why do you want to plant seed? Well, there's some environmental issues that we're all aware of, right? And this is increasingly, we're not having as much habitat as we once did. And this is a scene that is too often around, right, these days, and everybody has their green lawns, the turf nation that we are. So I'm always trying to work to change that. As Doug Ptolemy, who Terry just mentioned, he actually spoke for the Hampden Land Trust last night. So, and we had a joint meeting with the Cheshire Land Trust and Southington Land Trust, and we brought Doug to speak. So, yeah, we want to do that. We have issues with our Connecticut butterflies. There's a loss there. We know about the insect apocalypse happening. Our migratory birds are declining, and this is not a scene that you would want to see wood thrushes getting their food on macadam. We want to provide leaves for them as well. So, so I just wanted to put this plug in because this is the time when people are raking their leaves, and I just would hope that you all might think about leaving some leaves in your yard. I love this saying, "Leaves are not litter," by the Xerces Society. So yeah, that's something we have to think about too. There's also a decline in our native bees. So this is the rusty patched bumblebee that's now on the federal endangered species list. So there's many reasons for the declines, but habitat loss, pesticides, and are really up there. And we also have to deal with our invasives, the invasive plants that are taking away the habitat. So we need to kind of get rid of them first so we can provide space for native plants. So probably the most important reason to propagate from seed is that we want to help pollinators. We want to help Connecticut wildlife. And but there are other reasons as well. The cultivars that you might buy in the store, and that for the most part, most of us don't have access to the wild type seed. So we might be, might need to just deal with what you might find and buy in a nursery. But the wild type seeds versus cultivars, there's a big difference. That there's not much genetic diversity in what we might find in a nursery, right? They're propagating from sections. They're taking pieces of the maybe cuttings from the top of the plant, or even doing finer work than that to propagate plants. So they're not really doing them from seed. So if you plant from seed, you're getting a whole host of different things that happen when those seeds sprout. So there's a variety of diversity in the genetics in the plant. So the plants that we have growing around us really can adapt to drought better and other environmental conditions. And there is some research happening. There's about the comparing nativars or cultivars with the wild type plants. They may be, for the most part, in general, they're better for pollinators. There are sort of a few exceptions. And you can get a lot of plants out of planting of some seeds. It's pretty amazing what you can get out of it. And there is some real satisfaction with seeing that happen when you're planting and see the seeds sprout in the spring. It just it's really very satisfying to you, and to knowing that. And even once this plant grows to to be a mature plant, it's like, hey, I grew that from seed. That's pretty neat. So it's very, very satisfying to do that. There are some rules, though. If you go out and collect wild seed, it's real important that you only collect a little bit within a certain area. So 5% is something I've heard. And then also just a little bit from any one plant, because seeds are around, of course, to propagate more plants, right? You want to continue the species in one area. And they're also food for lots of different wildlife. So the reason that we're going to be actually, I'm going to show you how to do a plastic milk jug and put it outside in the cold. And so cold temperatures and moisture is a way to break some inhibitors that might prevent that seed from from sprouting. So there are a whole bunch of barriers that that might keep seeds from germinating. And for example, you wouldn't want to just suddenly start sprouting a seed indoors and then just put it outside. Or, it's nature's way of actually, when it gets cold, to protect that species, to protect the seed until the conditions are favorable. So the first is physical or mechanical dormancy. And that is, for an example, say a bird eats a berry, and the digestive tract of that bird will then break down that hard seed coat of the seed itself. And then also a little bit of fertilizer. And so that seed can then sprout and there's also some inhibitors for the temperature. So once that temperature, overcomes, go through the cold temperatures and then warm up in the spring, it will then sprout. So that's a physical and mechanical. In some cases, there are, there's some seeds, particularly out west, that need fire in order to germinate, or there's better germination after a fire. So the whole, and also the whole freezing and thawing, and then, you might need cold temperatures and then warm is another as well. And we're going to go over another one as well. There's also a chemical dormancy. So there are chemicals within the seed coat or within the seed that some things have to be washed out. And once that's broken, then germination can happen. So some seeds need it just cold, some need it, the majority of seeds actually need it cold and moist. And then some need light and some don't need light. So there's a whole variety of things. And you sort of have to decide or figure out, which, for what seed, which is which. And I highly recommend these two books by Bill Kalina. And Bill Kalina was the propagation manager and nursery manager at Garden of the Woods for a while. He became the executive director of Coastal Maine Botanic Garden and has moved on to, I'm not sure, I think it was Morris Arboretum or one of the arboretums, I think in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, he is kind of the guru of native plants, from propagating native plants. And these are amazing books. He writes so well, he's funny, and he just has experimented so much. He really has it down. And so I highly recommend these books for you to get. The Growing and Propagating Wildflowers is now out of print, but it is available. So you can get it quite easily online, I think. And so you also have one for trees, shrubs, and vines. So that's good as well. Another resource I recommend, and it's actually free online, is it's by Norman Dino. He was, as it says here, professor emeritus of chemistry at Penn State. And so he did just a whole bunch of experiments and figured out what seeds need to be successful in germinating. And so he has, this is like the second edition that is free. If you typed in, and by the way, I'll send to Terry a resource list. And so you'll have these resources as well as some others that will be really helpful for you. So don't worry about that. But anyway, but you can get this, actually the USDA published this online. They took it and made it available because it was out of print. I love what he says at the bottom of this. As you can see, if you can read it, it's a little blurry, but to plant a seed is a noble deed. Propagation is conservation. Pretty neat. So there are a whole bunch of different codes, germination codes that people use. There's one source out, it's a seed company in the Midwest. It's called Prairie Moon Nursery. They have different codes than this. These that I've used are based on Bill Kalina's book. And so I'm going to just use those tonight. Another source, and you might get other codes, is Native Seed Project. I believe that's right, in Maine. And so that's another source as well. And again, I'll have I'll have this for you as far as resources. But let's go over these. So the first one is code A, and that, if you think about it, is what most annuals need. So if they're sown at about, room temperature for up to 4 weeks, some will germinate even quicker than that. B is, most of our perennials are B, and most of our wildflowers are code B. So what that is that after they have cold and moist, you need both of those at 40 degrees, or sometimes, you can have freezing, that's fine. But then upon reaching 70 degrees, they will germinate. Code C is this multi-step germination. So you need cold, warm, cold, warm. Notice I say 40, 70, 47, that's just temperature, right? And I think Norman Dino's book actually goes into that. He doesn't use letter codes like this, but he goes into what they might need by that sort of step. Germination code D, 70, 40, 70. So it starts off, need a little bit of warmth. And you can do that actually by planting your seed and then putting it in a warm place in your house. Doesn't need necessarily light then at first. And then putting it outside. And then once it reaches warmth in the spring, the germination will happen. So G happens to do most fleshy fruits, the berries, quite a few of them won't. There are inhibitors that keep it from germinating until that fleshy pulp surrounding the seed is gotten rid of. So there's chemical inhibitors within that'll keep it that way. So something we just mentioned earlier. Code H, there are some seeds, and most seeds that are really, really small often need light to germinate. So, and those you want to put actually on the surface of your mix. You don't really want to plant deeply. And then there are a few, particularly those seeds in the pea family, that need scarification. In other words, they need to be scraped a little bit. And I'll show you how to do that I have an example of one. If you see a little asterisk, those are actually hydrophilic. Hydrophilic means they have to stay moist. They can't dry out. And there are some seeds that if they dry out, it might take a really long time to germinate. And then there are some, if they dry out, they're dead. And so it really does, vary. Here's an example of a hydrophilic seed that cannot dry out, or otherwise it will be permanently dormant, and that's bloodroot, Sanguinaria canadensis. And bloodroot also has a pretty cool thing as well, in that it is surrounded by, the seed is surrounded by, if you see this little like raised surface, these are called eliosomes, these fatty little sections that surround the seed coat. And what happens is the seeds will fall to the ground, or sometimes they're gathered by ants within the pod. Ants will take these seeds, put them into their burrows, and eat the fatty surrounding section there, and then plant the seed. So that's how bloodroot germinates, which is pretty cool. So if you were to gather some bloodroot seeds, you would probably need to take off that fatty little section there, the lyosome, in order to germinate. And also, as you can see in the bottom, I'm showing you some. I just have a sampling of some plants, and I'm trying to show you a variety of things that have different kinds of germination. And those books that I mentioned all have great listings of all the ones that have them. So this needs to be warm for a while. So 70, 40, 70. So that's germinating code D, and it also needs to be moist, right? So for the other kinds of seeds, and that don't need moisture, that need to actually dry out a little bit, a good way to gather them is to just take a paper bag and put the whole kind of seed head into that for now, at first, and then gradually go through and pull off the seeds. I'm going to show you that with New England aster in a few minutes here. And yeah, the other thing is, don't use a plastic bag, because the moisture within the seed, if it's not entirely dried out, will actually kind of rot the seed. It can cause some problems. So here I'm collecting, I think it's Bowman's root, Galenia trifoliata. So you need to, what I've had really great germination with is actually a clear plastic milk jug. So here I am cutting some holes in the bottom of it. I'll show you this. I'll actually show you an actual one in a few minutes here. And then you cut the milk jug, you take the lid off and cut it so that all the way to almost to the handle, but leave a little section for the handle there. And because you can actually use that to lift it up. You have a little hinge, which is kind of nice. Here's the hinge. What I would recommend is planting it even a little deeper than you see here. Plant it up to the top, and I'll show you that in just a minute here. Also, don't use a wooden popsicle stick like here. So I'm telling you not to do what I originally did. What I found was in the cold and moisture, most in the moisture through the winter, that writing on the label when spring came around, I couldn't read it. It had totally, gotten real moldy. So I would recommend using a plastic label. And also you can cut up actually a white plastic milk jug. That's a nice, quick, easy way to get some free seeds. I'm sorry, free labels. So I am going to switch off my screen share for a minute. And whoops, let me just do, no, I'm gonna hold on a sec. I'm gonna stop my share. It's gonna take me, I'll have to toggle back and forth here, and I do apologize, but the time, it'll probably get better with time. So, all right. Now you can see, this is the document camera I'm just using here, and so you can see the seed mix. When you put a seed mix, I would use a regular bagged seed mix. I wouldn't use soil from your garden. There's some things that might, you might have, you'll have organisms in there. And so a sterile seed mix seems to work better. And what you do first, I filled it up to the top here. And I'm going to take this, you're not going to be able to see this too well, but I'm going to take, here's a plastic milk jug, and I'm just going to take that and I'm going to push down on it just to firm it up a little bit. Now you don't want to really push very, very hard so that it's, you want to just lose a little bit of the oxygen within it, but you don't want to get rid of everything that happens to be in there. You just firm up the soil a little bit. And then you're ready to go from there. I'm going to, actually, I'm going to plant something for you, and I'll see, I'll show you that now while I have it, so I don't have to toggle back and forth too much. I have some, this is closed gentian seeds, and this is a seed that, oh, by the way, little trick here, kind of nice, is your pill bottles, which we seem to have a lot of in our house for some reason, really make nice storage. Envelopes work fine as well. So I've gathered some closed gentian seed. It's a really, really fine seed. Let me show it to you in my hand. So if it's a really, really fine seed, let me get to the camera. What does it tell you about that? It needs light to germinate. That's usually the case, almost 99% of the time. So I'm going to sprinkle the seed on the surface. Now, closed gentian, a little bit goes a long way. So you're going to have a gazillion plants in here, and it might be too many plants, and it might get too close. But so sprinkle your seed in there. Then take a spray bottle and spray that. So what you're going to do, that's doing is making contact for the seeds, making contact with the soil a little bit better. Now, if you've ever tried growing vegetables and other in flowers and maybe had them kind of rot on you, there's something called damping off, which is a general term for bacterial and some other kinds of rot that can happen and cause a seed. So a way I get around it is I use, this is just a really fine aquarium gravel, really thin, sort of the smallest aquarium gravel you can buy. You can use sand. I've heard like #1 pool filter sand works really well. If you can get what they call sharp sand, it's not play sand. That's usually rounded, the little pieces of the small particles are rounded, but something that has rough edges, this works really well. And I'm going to pour that on the top. And what that does is that prevents damping off. That's all you need, not that much. It's just what it does, it creates more surface area for the fungus or bacteria that causes that. And here's a plastic label. What I often do is I will, this Gentiana clausa, closed gentian, but if I can sometimes plant, up to 4 things in here. And what can do, somebody asked, what is that white powder? I missed it. That is a really fine aquarium gravel. You can get it in Petco and some of those places. And again, the other possibility is a sharp sand, as I mentioned. So you can actually write up to 4 plants, and if you write kind of finely and put arrows, and then just put your label in there. And next, I am going to then close the milk jug and then take some duct tape and put it around where the opening was, and you are ready to go. So let me put this down because I'm going to do something else to show you in a few minutes and get back to the PowerPoint. Okay, I have to go to the integrated webcam. Right, back where I am. Okay, I hope it doesn't go back to the beginning, but let's see. Oh, it does. Isn't that weird? Okay, I'll just toggle here. Sorry about that. All right, let me go. That's too bad. Oh, no, it did that. Good. Okay, cool. All right. So, and here you have it taped up. Just use some duct tape. That's all you need. And next, you're going to put that outside for the winter. Now, you have now until, the beginning of February to do that. It works really well. So what the spot I seem to have really nice success with is morning sun. So what you've created here with these clear plastic milk jugs are mini greenhouses. So it'll go through the winter and the cold temperatures. It's not going to germinate until the temperatures stay warm for a while. We have these warm spells. It goes back and forth. There's not really, you don't have to worry about that. I've had really good luck putting in an east side, sort of a sheltered location, although I think, winds whipping on this is not going to bother it really. But I'd say east because once things warm up in the spring, you don't want this to be baking. You want to have it in a sort of getting morning sun seems to work really well. So let's take a look at some other plants. And yeah, I'm going to, I will pop back and forth here a little bit, but butterfly weed is a great one of our native milkweeds. And it attracts, of course, butterflies, but also a lot of our native bees. I like this color synchronization here with a coral hair streak, and it was modeling quite well for us here. And of course is the food plant for monarch butterflies. Let me show you a pod, and I'm going to get quicker as we go along with this, the more I do this. Okay. One thing that really works well when you're using a pod is this is a pod of butterfly weed. So you open it up, and they of course have these umbrellas, right? They need to get around. So you can see that the seed is attached to the silk, and you know, I've made the mistake in the early years of putting these pods in a bag, and suddenly had parachutes all over the house. So that's, don't do what I did. So what you could do though is notice I'm holding with my thumb the bottom of the silk. Then you can just pull off the seed. So hopefully you can see me doing this from the silk. It's just an easy way of getting the seed off the pod without or very little of the silk flying around. And you'll notice I have some seeds there. So, all right, just a little trick. I don't know if you knew about that, but it's very, and you might see some silk flying around as I'm speaking, but there's not much. So that works pretty well. All right, so let me get back. Okay, stop. All right, and okay. Are you going to go back? Screen share. All right, yeah, that's right. I need to go full screen. Okay, we'll be back. Oops, just a sec. Thank you. All right, now, purple coneflower is not a native Connecticut plant, but most of us know. Let me backspace here just to tell you that this is a bee germinator. We're going to look, most of the plants we're going to see tonight, or notice, have just need the cold, moist, and then warmth. So butterfly weed, swamp milkweed, common milkweed, poke milkweed, all the 5 species that we have in Connecticut, all are this type of germination that they need. Okay, so Echinacea purpurea, purple coneflower, all the coneflowers really that I know of are bee germinators, the same thing, cold, moist, and then warmth. By the way, the state bird of New Jersey is not dead. That's the joke. I know I'm from New Jersey, and the state mineral is concrete. Actually, the state bird is the American goldfinch, and they love these seeds. Leave your seeds up if you don't gather them to grow, because a lot of birds like seeds, and that's one example. But I wanted to share this. A few years ago, I was doing a program and gathering some seeds out in front of the Peabody. We had some moist temperatures and some rain. This is so easy to grow, and you probably, if you had purple coneflower, you have these little sprouts coming up. But it was germinating right on the seed pod. Isn't that wild? Did you get the plants? You can see the little the leaves there. So pretty cool. Another Connecticut native, not too common in the state, I think it's found in the northwest corner, is wild senna, Senna hebecarpa. This is a seed that not only needs light to germinate, it needs cold and moist and then warmth, but it should have a letter I after this as well, because this is actually, it's in the legume or pea family, and this needs to be scarified. So we'll tell you about that in a little bit. It's the food plant of many of our sulfur butterflies, the clouded sulfur here. And this is from my garden. It's a very architectural plant as well. It grows really tall, so you need it sort of in the middle of the border or so, but it has these nice attractive seed pods and as well. And let me go back and show you one of these seed pods. Again, appreciate your patience with this. So, all right. So I'm going to move these butterfly weeds out of the way, seeds. And here is a pod. see if I can get close to the, and if you notice when I open this up, you'll see, like peas, you'll see the seeds in little sections. There we go, a little bit closer. And they're very, very glossy looking. Yep, they're popping all over the place here. But I think, let me show you with a little piece of sandpaper, because what I'm going to do is scarify them. So this is just some light sandpaper, and definitely a hard covering. So what I'll do is I'll just fold it over, and for about, you count to 20 or 30, just do this back and forth for a little bit. And it's just to take off a little bit of the seed coat, and then plant them. Now, one thing I did find from hearing from some people, which is interesting, that this plant actually, and while I'm talking, I'll go back. This plant actually germinates. Once you do that, it germinates pretty quickly. So what'll happen is, if it's warm, and if you did that now and the temperatures were in the 70s for 10 days or so, you will have germination, and it'll sprout, start up, and then it will die. So this is one that you would want to do later on in the year, like, in January or something like that. And when it's really cold, then do that and then plant it. So again, as I mentioned, you have a lot of time to do this. There are some seeds that need about 90 days, a couple, 2 to 3 months. Most seeds, most seeds, I would say 2 months of cold and moist, and then the germination. So that gives you a little handle on it. So I would say to the end of January is fine to do a lot of this. So, okay, let me get back. Okay. We're getting quicker, folks. All right. So another one that does need to be scarified is an annual. This is partridge pea, a native plant. Great plant for wildlife and of many kinds. It also needs a light to germinate, and the cold, moist, followed by warmth. It's in the pea family as well. And now we're getting into the aster family. Most of all of these, there are probably a few exceptions, but most of them are all of our, they're bee germinators. So they're the cold, moist, and then warmth. So Joe Pyeweed is one, New England aster. And so what you'll see in these is, like milkweeds, they will have a little bit of an umbrella, and once they form their seeds. And it's best to just, once you put your seed in a bag and then dry it out, let it dry for a little bit, then pull the seeds off. You'll notice there is a tiny seed attached to each little umbrella of, of little silk. It's made to fly away, to get away from the parent plant, to find a good spot. So these are all very similar to that. And as I mentioned, well, actually, most in the aster family have this strategy. A really nice, another bee germinator that I like, cold, moist, and then warmth, is blue-stemmed goldenrod. This plant grows in dry shade, and that's pretty wild, but it's a lovely plant. I love it. It has the flowers along the stem. And goldenrod is most people know this by now, but if you don't, goldenrod does not cause hay fever or allergies. It's ragweed that grows next to it. And the Brits have been using this plant, or goldenrods, for years and years in their gardens, long before we did as a nation. So ironweed is another one. That's really great. Here's I tagged a monarch that was on this, Vernonia novoboracensis, another bee germinator, cold, moist, and warmth. How many fritillary butterflies can you count here? I see 3. I think these are great spangled fritillaries that actually feed on violets, but they love to nectar on ironweed. Now, here is one of America's favorite wildflowers. And I am going to show you one thing that I did was I actually grew this. It went to seed. I'm sorry, it germinated. And then I never planted it. So I'm going to show you what a milk jug looks like that is, excuse me, that actually hasn't been planted yet. And we're going to talk about strategies that cardinal flower uses. By the way, this will go either act sort of like an annual. This will actually germinate in moisture and warmth, but it seems to do better. You have better success if you do that over the winter. So let me just check. Let me just stop share and show you this. Yeah, I just thought you might want to see what this might look like after the spring. This is the kind of fun. You look down in the hole in the spring and you see, I've got stuff germinating. It's so cool. So here you go. Here's what this happened to check and look like. Now, these take a while to kind of grow. There's some little tricks to growing cardinal flower that I think might help you. Notice though that they get, they're a tiny, tiny seed. They need light to germinate, and they will then, as they grow, and notice there's so much competition in here. Some plants are winning out. Notice this one right here is probably the largest, and eventually this might crowd out. And I'll show you this with in just a minute with blue lobelia that did that. This actually. Notice it's forming a basal rosette, and that's what happens when in the fall. And you want to keep leaves off of it. It does need light through the winter. That's one trick to keeping it alive. It's not a really long-lived plant anyway. The other trick to keep it going through time is that it will self-seed is you leave bare ground around it and let the seeds fall onto the bare ground surrounding it. And that's how you can keep it going. So that's cardinal flower. And let me show you what happens when things were crowded out a little bit. There's blue lobelia, and you have one gigantic plant that is crowding out everything below it. There's probably a few, there's some other plants down in there, but that'll happen. This is a great plant. I love blue lobelia a lot. It lasts a while. It can grow into a nice patch, and it is beautiful. So, all right, back to the show here. We're getting down there. Let's see. Hold on. Okay. As I say, this is sort of the next best thing with. Wish you were all here. We could do this together, but let's. Okay. All right. So here's blue lobelia. Again, really nice plant. And these, of course, are the plants that the ruby-throated hummingbird will come into. So let's get into a few trees. This is not a native tree, but I did put it in my yard, and I love it. It's red buckeye. It grows in the Appalachians, sort of mid-Atlantic, south, and west a little bit in the eastern U.S. But it has those tubular red flowers that hummers love. And it gets, as a red buckeye, it gets these shiny, big fruits. Just a quick story that I had, this went to a whole bunch of fruits, and I was about ready to gather some and plant them. The squirrels got ahead and got a lot of them and planted them. And they forgot some of them. So I had some small plants come up, which was great. So that's something that was a good thing that happened. But there is a way. We're going to also, by the way, this is happens to be, let me back up here. This is a bee germinator, so it needs cold, moist, and warmth, but it also needs to stay moist. So it can't dry out. So the seeds drop to the ground and then get into the moist ground, and then they'll germinate. Now, our Doug Ptolemy, if you've seen him and speak, you know this. If you haven't, and you see him, you'll know it. But that our oaks are probably one of the best trees for wildlife. There are about 400 species in our state, 450 species of Lepidoptera, butterflies, and moths that feed on the leaves. So it's a larval food plant for so much. It's a keystone species. So what it's providing is those caterpillars are providing food for birds. Now our white oaks and red oaks are these are bee germinators as well. They need moisture as well, but they germinate in different ways. The white oak on the left, you know the acorn, but it looks like a ski mask. The cap looks like a ski mask on the top, or a cap that not really a ski mask, but a ski hat. Goes down a little farther, and the acorn's oblong. The red oak looks like a beret, the cap, and it's more a rounded acorn. But these, the white oaks will germinate right away without going through the winter. They go through, the radical grows a little bit, but it needs the cold and moist to actually send up the leaves in the spring. And its fruits are, the nuts are quite sweeter than the red oaks, and the squirrels will eat them right away. So it's consequently why you don't see as many white oaks. They also bite off that radical. They'll bite off and keep it from germinating and growing. So plant some red oaks. Just throw some acorns in your yard, and you might get some trees. It's the caterpillars are feed even on small plants. What I've done, or I shouldn't say what I've done, what I've bought recently is some large tubing from one of the big box stores, and this is like plumber's pipe, or the PVC pipe. And I'm going to sink that vertically in the ground about 4 or 5 inches to keep the voles and squirrels from doing it, and put the seed in, down below the ground. A rule of thumb, by the way, is to plant as deep as the width of the seed, right? So the acorns, just the width of the acorn below the ground. You could plant a little bit deeper for them, but so that's a generalization for most seeds. The plant as deep as the width of the seed. So this keeps these keep the squirrels from and voles and chipmunks from digging up the seeds. I actually temporarily put some red buckeye this year in a container I had on my patio. Something got them. I don't know if it was they were gone. So I was going to put them in this pipe, and don't have any this year. Here's red stemmed or red osier dogwood. This is one that does need to have the seed, the fleshy part removed. So, and it also needs as well, it needs warmth and cold and then warmth. It's the D germinator. Another really cool plant is white bangberry, and doll's eyes is another name, and Actea pachypoda, and it can be either a B or a C germinator. So in other words, cold, moist, and warmth, or warm, cold, warm. So, and it does need moisture. It can't dry out to germinate. What I did was here's this fleshy part on the right. Those are the seeds. They look like little pieces of pie. They're like a like a slice of pie or something. They're shaped a kind of a cool shape, and they're it's like almost like a capsule in a way. They're like 4-parted seeds in each pod, and so you need to put them. What I've done is put them in actually some New Zealand sphagnum moss in a plastic bag. This is okay because it needs to stay moist, so you want it in a plastic bag this time. And so what you can do is put it on top of your fridge for a couple months, then put it in your fridge, and then plant it in a milk jug outside. Or just put it right to a milk jug and plant it outside. And then once the warm temperature comes, it will germinate. So here are a couple other asters that I mentioned earlier. They're bee germinators, cold, moist, and warmth. Maple leaf viburnum, a nice shrub. Don't forget our shrubs, they're really great. It is actually in fruit right now. Let's see, here it is. This is a time you can gather the fruits. So it's that it needing more warmth, then cold, then warmth again. So you'll need to have it get warm before you put it outside for a while. And it does need to stay moist as well. Pearly Everlasting, another bee germinator. It's the food plant of the American beauty butterfly. Also, another butterfly you probably know is the black swallowtails need the members of the carrot family, like fennel. It's a bee germinator. Originally, they probably came to Zizia, though, besides parsley and fennel. Golden Alexanders, and that's a really cool plant. It's a bee germinator. And here's the caterpillar, and here's the adult. Cool plant. That's the plant that we planted the seed of tonight. That's closed gentian. And actually, I don't know if you can see that. You notice that one of the, in the far left, the bluish flower actually has a bumblebee inside. So the bumblebees pollinate this plant. This is a very, it's a really specific plant. The plant needs bumblebees in order to germinate. So it, it's specialized that way. So the bumblebee forces its way in there, and then will pollinate it, which is pretty cool. By the way, the seed, as I mentioned, does need to have light. So you need to have it toward the surface, as you probably noticed. Another great plant to put in your yard, really easy from seed, is broad-leaved mountain mint, pycnanthemum. It's a bee germinator. You should know what that is by now, probably. Also, are blazing stars. They're from the west and the Midwest and the prairies, but this is Liatris ligulostylus, is like one of the favorite plants for monarchs. They do love this plant. And so once you have your plants sprout up, this person actually, Native Seed Project, I think the folks in Maine, they might have germinated in a pot, which is fine. I mean, you can do it that way, whatever works best for you. You'll need to keep it, like a plastic lid on it. That's another way to go. But once you have all these little plants, you need to prick them out. It's best to hold the plant by the leaf and then pot them on. You can pot them up into, smaller pots, or if you could let them get a little bit bigger and then just put them right out. What I've done is actually created a seedling bed. And so I took a raised bed, and then because it was in the sun, they do need full sun. For some of these plants can really burn them. So I did put some shade cloth on it, and it seemed to work quite well. And you can see the plants as they get much larger, they can deal with the sun much better. And some sunflowers there as well. So I mentioned that Nativar's research project of comparing, it's something you can get involved with Bud Burst, and that is just comparing the native wild type seeds with seeds that are from plants. Or actually, I'm sorry, this has to do, you can do it with seeds, but you can also do it with plants as well, as to see what pollinators are coming to, how well they do. And that's it. Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it. And I'm happy to answer questions in the chat, and Terry can come on and.
Yeah, I am back. Thank you so much, Jim. That was great. That was so interesting. So folks, if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A or the chat. I'll be watching. But I have a question right away, actually, which is, say there are folks that want to do this with their kids, they're supplementing their science classes, or they're working with kids within their house of worship. What are like the 3 plants that are going to give them sort of that are easiest to do and maybe give them the most bang for their buck type of thing? Sure.
Among easiest to do, you probably noticed the purple coneflower sprouting out of the seed pod. That's certainly very easy to do. I would say most of what I showed you, and members of the aster family in general are really easy. New England aster and some of those, I would say. Blue lobelia seems to be really easy as well. So yeah, that is as well a good one. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so goldenrods again, asters and goldenrods are great pollinator plants. So any of those, um, yeah, I would highly recommend.
so Bernie was wondering, do you have any advice on growing ginseng? I have a few plants, but I've never gotten them to grow from seed.
Hmm. I believe that they're sort of a multi-step germinator. And so, yeah, they probably need to stay, I'm pretty sure to stay moist. Um, and yeah, they probably will need like the warmth, cold, and then warmth again. Yeah, if you hold just a sec, let's see if I can, well, you know what? I'm worried that if I try to get offline and looking that up for you, I don't have that offhand in front of me, but I can certainly I can find that and get back. So yeah.
So Karen wants to know, do these seeds survive a frost if they're still on the plant?
That's a good question. So it's more. Some will, yes, definitely. Some can are quite hardy, but it's more of a question of they might survive, but they won't necessarily. They're not going to germinate, right? So most of these seeds, as we saw tonight, are um, they need the moisture. They need cold and moist, and then warmth. So, but most of our annuals could survive cold, no problem. So any seed that would be an annual could stay on the plant for a fair amount of time. Um, some, but some seed could get too damp, and not if it's not dried out ahead. And well, let's see. Yeah, I mean, some of our annuals. I'm trying to think if it wasn't planted directly and then start to germinate. Yeah, it's possible. I would say some of our annuals could survive okay that way. Yeah, but again, I think it's best that you plant them out. And I do want to mention that some of the annuals, even though it says needs to start warm, some of them need the cold and moist ahead of time. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes good sense. Michelle wants to know. She said, "I've collected assorted native perennial flower seeds this year. How can I clear soil to scatter these seeds onto the ground now?"
Yeah. So the reason I showed you how to do this, like say in a milk jug, and that is certainly a possible way. One thing is that you probably will have better luck and better germination. But that being said, say you have a bunch of seeds and you don't get to planting them all, you can clear a section. And, part of it is a matter of scraping open a little section and putting your seeds down. Remember I mentioned about cardinal flower, that if you gather some cardinal flower, scrape and open, have some open soil and put down that right near the plant. So, yeah, there's so that should do well. So that's it does need a little bit of bare ground. You may you can take some leaves and not cover over the top of the bare area. Cornflower needs pretty much bare ground, but some other seeds will still germinate under like some crushed leaves, very light layering to protect it a little bit. But yeah, so that's all it really need to do.
So you just put the seeds on top of the bare ground
That's right.
and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
leave them there.
Hmm.
Now? You can do that now?
You can do that now. That's right.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing this weekend. Judy wants to know, is there any trick to getting milkweed to germinate? I had good luck with goldenrod and lobelia last year, but none of my milkweed sprouted.
Huh. Yeah. So milkweeds, they need cold and moist. Yeah, as we mentioned that, and it's yeah. I don't know what might have happened. I don't know if that was when Judy did that in a milk jug or whatever. Sometimes, that sometimes some like weevils can get in the pods and damage the seed. So, but it's good to get fresh, really kind of thick seeds. Sometimes seeds aren't, in times of drought, particularly, they don't develop well enough. And so it's possible that could have happened. And so it's good to get seeds that milkweed seeds that are kind of plump, if you know what I'm saying, just kind of, they're not. So that might be something to try.
So Kathy said, I had the pleasure of attending your talk last year at the Peabody, but I didn't have milk jugs then. Now I do. At the time, you had lots of seeds available to the participants, and I still have some of those, as well as others I collected last fall. What can you tell me about viability? Will I need to toss them fresh, or is it worth trying to germinate them?
That's a great question. Yeah. So I didn't mention viability. So you'll lose every year that you save them. You'll lose some viability. It goes downhill. Some seed won't germinate well the following year, but most do actually. So when you see seeds for sale and it says, plant by 2020 in a packet, and you don't, that doesn't mean they're not going to germinate. So there is still some viability. Now, a way you can actually make seeds last longer is to hold them in your fridge, put them in, seed containers or even envelopes, and then you can actually put them in a plastic bag, but within the bag, put those drying agents, those little like round things with a chemical in them that you get in some foods and stuff and so forth, and some perishable goods. Put one of those in there with it. And if the seed stays dry and it stays cool within your fridge, it can last a few years really well. Not a problem. And what the seed banks do, they actually put it in a deep freeze, kept dry and extremely cold, and they can last years and years. So that's it. So for the person that had last year's seeds, I would try some. Yeah, I would do it again. And the other thing you can try is do a combination. So plant some seeds in milk jugs or trays, covered trays with clear plastic, as well as try just spreading some out in some areas you've scraped open to put some seed down on. So see what happens. It's worth trying.
That's awesome. Lynn said, and Lynn actually, she also asked if there's a chance of viewing this again. Yes, we have a, YouTube channel, and all of our webinars are up there. So when I send out the resources that Jim has, I will send out our website and also the YouTube channel, and you can check out many different things. So she wants to know, how do you germinate bee balm?
So that's a bee or a code if you want. It needs cold, moist, and then it will germinate. And actually, bee balm does quite well. It's pretty easy to do. Yeah.
I love bee balm. So pretty.
Yeah.
John Marcolon said, also check out, this is a resource, I guess, for everyone. Check out Annie White's research.
Yeah.
Wild type versus cultivar and nativars.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, I was going to mention Annie White. Thank you. It's on the sort of tip of my tongue. She's at UVM postdoc doing some research on that. It's really, really interesting. I think she found that one of the cultivars or nativars of one of the phloxes, the nativar did much better. But for the most part, I think her findings were that the wild type seeds and plants do better for attracting pollinators.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. Do we have any more questions, Liz? I'm furious there for a minute.
What's that?
That was I have to say, that was an extremely thorough presentation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I'm surprised that there aren't as many questions, because every time I was thinking like, what about this? Like 2 slides later, you would answer that question. Like, okay, scratch out. So this is something that people can start now.
Right.
and
Yep.
get
Exactly right.
going.
Yep. And
And where can we see those? So those codes obviously are very important. Where do we see them?
yeah, so I got those right directly from Bill Kalina's book on, well, the two books that I showed. Yeah. So those are in there, and
Okay.
you can also see similar codes. They might be a little bit different letters from if you get on Prairie Moon Nursery on their website.
Mhm.
They sell seed, and yeah, they have germination codes listed as well. I'll have this. I'll send resources as I mentioned to folks. So I'll try to get you that in the next couple days, Terry, and then you can forward to the emails.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lynn said,
So
thank you. This is very inspiring for a newbie.
yeah.
Um, great, great, great. Any other questions, folks? We have a little more time if people have more questions, but we might be good. People might just be picking out their seeds and whatnot. All right.
Yeah. By the way, if I get, oh, I did want to mention one thing is that there is a project in Fairfield County. Connecticut NOFA is sponsoring what's something called the Ecotype project, and that is that's native seed that's been gathered, and they are then working with some nurseries. There's a wholesale nursery, Planter's Choice in Newtown, who are going to make the plants available. And so I think coming down the road, the next few years, we'll be able to buy plants that have been gathered from the wild in Connecticut, which is pretty neat. So the seed is not available now, nor I guess the plants as well, but it's sort of just starting. So, but that's very encouraging to hear.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So
That's very cool. Any other questions? Michelle said, thank you very much, Jim and Terry. Well done. Thank you. We're always pleased to be able to bring these to you. And I actually, another good resource is pollinator-pathway.org.
right.
I know pollinator pathways are going in across Connecticut. This is sort of part of this the webinar series is about promoting that pollinator pathway, and you can find out if your town has a pollinator pathway. If it does, you can get involved. If it doesn't, you can start one. As you can see, it's reasonably easy to get going. Let's see here. Kathy is raising her hand. I don't know what to do with it. Hang on a second. Oh, what just happened? Kathy, do you have a question? Oh. Let's see there's a Q&A. Wait, wow. Wait. Oh, wait, Judy wanted to know. Oh, a couple more questions. Okay. How about blanket flower? Judy wants to know about blanket flower.
Sure. So blanket flower or gaillardia, that is, it's a plant from the South, and it grows wild in Florida and places like that. But it's in the nursery, and it's a great butterfly plant. So they need kind of dry conditions. I probably, if I planted seed from that, I would mix a little bit more perlite or vermiculite and make the seed mix a little lighter than something from the bag. So get a seed mix that you would buy, a bagged seed mix, but mix in a little bit more of the perlite, because they grow in sandy places. They're not extremely long-lived here, but you folks along the coast are in the sandy place, so it should do okay. And that would be one trick. I believe that those, being in the aster family, I think they probably are what that sort of the bee germinator, the needing cold, moist, then warmth. Then they'll, through the winter, they'll grow from there. But that is one you can also find seed packets of. And there are, follow the instructions on that as well. So
And Kathy was wondering, can you talk a little bit more about goldenrod and milkweed seeding directly on the ground?
Sure. So what'll happen naturally is that these all have the little parachutes. Think of the milkweed that has a big giant parachute that goes, you know, it's going to fly away. So they do that as well, as does boneset and many of the asters. So that they when you let me see. Yeah, let me show you something. When you gather the seed, here's an example of New England aster. So it'll be in a cluster like this. So what you need to do is to get it off of the seed pod. Let me just see it here. Just pull off the sections there, and you'll get a whole lot of seed from. Oops, let me get it here. You'll get a whole lot of seed from the from just a little bit of this. Each one of these little parachutes is attached to a little seed. You probably can see that there. You can see the seeds attached there. So you need to separate all those, and then you have them in your hand. Put them on the ground and press into the ground so that so the seed makes contact with the earth, and that's really a way to the way to do that. So I'm hope that answers your question. Sure.
And Judy wanted to know, how large should plants be when they're transplanted into the garden?
Yeah, that's a great question. It sort of depends. What'll happen is depends kind of on the size of the plant. The gentians that I planted are really, and how fast they grow. They're really slow growers, and so they might need a couple of seasons in that milk jug, believe it or not, as they kind of grow pretty slowly. But most plants you can prick out. They'll be tall enough to prick out in late spring. You can just lift out. And again, use a little tool and like a tweezers or something like that. And don't use the tweezers to pull on the stem. You don't want to touch the stem at all, but just or some kind of, what a dibber is. It's something that just like a pointed instrument to kind of push away the soil so that it loosens up and you can pull the seedling out by the leaf. So you use the leaves to pull with, and that'll continue, that'll keep a little bit of soil around the roots and then transplant. So yeah, you can pot up, into bigger pots, or even put directly into the soil if the plants are, a few inches tall. 3 inches or so. Yeah, be fine.
All right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any other questions? Oh, wait. Michelle, can you mix these tiny umbrella seeds with sand to separate them to make it easier to sow them?
Oh, great idea. Yeah, yes, you can. That's fine. In fact, some of the seed mixes that professional houses use, like if you get there, sometimes they'll say just mix in a bunch of sand, and then you're throwing it. It's a way of sort of separating the seed a little bit. That's a perfectly good way to do it. Yeah.
And remind us where you get the sand from. Is that like Petco?
So the couple of ways, you mean to cover the tops of the?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So again, I used a really fine aquarium gravel. It was really, really, really small, and that was from Petco. I just got a bag of it. It goes a long way. A small bag will last for many, many milk jugs. So again, builder's sand at some of the big box stores can be used. I would not recommend play sand. It's to the round, it's the round and that actually might cause it to be too moist. So yeah, so builder sand is good from like masonry places or something like that. And then number one, filter sand, which is at pool supplies. That's another place you can get that. Yeah. So just put a little bit over the top, and that's to solve that damping off problem.
All right, great. All right. Any other questions? This is great. I think we're going to have a lot of amazing gardens next spring.
Yeah, that's great.
And so, folks, just to remind you, January 14th, we'll have Doug Ptolemy from, who's written several books, Nature's Best Hope. Right? That's the name of it. Yes. Nature's Best
Yes.
Hope. He's really a leading expert on backyard gardening. So that'll be great. That'll be January 14th, Thursday. We're also working on some other webinars in conjunction with Hartford Seminary. So stay tuned that more information will be coming forth soon on that. Let's see here. It looks like everyone's saying thank you in the chat. So
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. I can't tell you how
Thanks,
much
Terry.
I appreciate it having you be here. That was a great, very informative presentation. Folks, we are recording this, so you will be able to watch it again and take even more notes. So, and please, so send us your pictures. Can't wait to see your gardens in the spring.
Oh, that'd be great. Oh, yeah, and I'll make I was just going to give you my email, but I'll give you that when I get the resources. I'll give everybody my email as well if you have any questions. So
right, and also, folks, I'll send out the link for you to sign up for IRE Jan's emails, because we'll have more information on upcoming events and also advocacy. We'll be working on some environmental legislation issues coming up in the next Connecticut session and the next administration. So, Carol said, thanks for all the inspiration going into winter. You're welcome.
Thanks, Carol. Yeah. Good
all
luck.
right, everyone. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.
You too. All right. Take care.
Bye.